The yellow hazmat suits moved like phantoms through the empty streets, their reflective strips catching the harsh fluorescent glare of emergency floodlights. Behind them, restaurant after restaurant stood sealed with bright orange tape, their windows dark, their dreams shattered. The unemployment office had run out of forms by noon. Grocery stores displayed empty shelves where fresh produce once gleamed. Panic had consumed the entire state like a virulent disease, spreading faster than any contamination ever could. "Doctor," Sarah Chen pressed her palms against the cool glass of the emergency command center, watching the organized chaos unfold below. 47 establishments closed, 312 people detained, 7,000 jobs lost in 72 hours. The numbers scrolled endlessly across the monitors behind her, each digit representing a life disrupted, a family in crisis. "Ma'am, we have another positive identification of the suspected pathogen," Officer Martinez announced, his voice tight with exhaustion. "This makes 18 confirmed cases across 6 counties." "Doctor?" Chen turned slowly, her lab coat rustling in the sterile silence. Something about this outbreak defied every pattern she had studied in 20 years of epidemiological work. The distribution was too random, the symptoms too varied, the timeline too compressed. But the evidence was undeniable. Or so it seemed. 3 days earlier, Marcus Thompson had been the happiest man in Riverside County. His dream restaurant, Soul's Kitchen, had finally opened its doors after 2 years of planning, saving, and countless sleepless nights. The grand opening celebration had drawn over 200 community members, their laughter spilling onto the sidewalk as the aroma of slow-cooked ribs and cornbread filled the evening air. Marcus wiped his hands on his apron, surveying the crowded dining room with quiet pride. Every table was occupied, every face glowing with satisfaction. Mrs. Rodriguez from the flower shop had brought her entire extended family. Principal Jackson from the local high school sat at the corner booth, savoring his third helping of mac and cheese. The Mitchell family occupied the large round table near the window, their children's excited chatter adding to the festive atmosphere. Marcus called out Tony Castellanos, the neighborhood electrician who had donated his services during the renovation. "This gumbo is incredible. Man, you're going to put every other restaurant out of business." The chef grinned, his dark skin glistening with honest sweat. "That's not the plan. Tony, there's room for everyone at the table." Karen Mitchell watched this exchange from her seat with growing irritation. She had arrived 30 minutes late for her reservation, expecting immediate seating despite the obvious crowd. When the hostess politely explained that their table had been given away after the 15-minute grace period, Karen's voice had risen to a pitch that drew stares from neighboring diners. "This is completely unacceptable," she had declared, her perfectly manicured finger jabbing toward the reservation book. "I specifically called this morning to confirm. I am Karen Mitchell. Do you know who I am?" The young hostess, barely 19, and working her first service job, had apologized repeatedly while offering the next available table. But Karen's anger had already crystallized into something harder, more calculating. She observed Marcus's easy rapport with his customers, the genuine warmth in his interactions, the obvious respect the community showed him. It galled her in ways she couldn't articulate, touching nerve endings of privilege and entitlement that had never been challenged. Marcus approached their table personally, his smile genuine despite the earlier commotion. "Mrs. Mitchell, I want to apologize for the confusion about your reservation. Opening night has been a bit overwhelming, but I hope you'll give us another chance to make it right." Karen's response was arctic. "I'm not sure I'll be back. The service has been disappointing, and frankly, I'm concerned about the cleanliness standards here." Her husband shifted uncomfortably beside her. "Karen, The food is actually quite good. Richard, please. Her tone silenced him immediately. She turned back to Marcus, her eyes narrowing. I noticed several health code violations already. I hope for everyone's sake that you're more careful with food safety than you are with reservations. Marcus felt the familiar tightness in his chest that came with thinly veiled hostility, but his voice remained steady. Of course, food safety is our top priority. If you have specific concerns, I'd be happy to address them. I'm sure you would. Karen's smile was sharp as broken glass. I'll keep that in mind. The evening progressed without further incident, but Marcus noticed Karen's scrutiny throughout the meal. She photographed her food before eating, made notes in a small leather journal, and questioned the server extensively about ingredients and preparation methods. When the family finally left, she paused at the door to study the health department certificate on the wall, her expression unreadable. At 11:30 that night, as Marcus finished cleaning the kitchen, his phone buzzed with a text from his mother. Saw the news coverage of your opening on Channel 7. So proud of you, baby. Dad would have been proud too. He smiled, thinking of his father's calloused hands teaching him to season cast iron, the patient way he had explained the chemistry of baking, the dreams they had shared of opening their own place someday. Soul's Kitchen was that dream realized, a bridge between generations and communities, a testament to persistence and hope. The call came at 6:47 a.m. 911, what's your emergency? Karen's voice trembled with practiced hysteria. My entire family is violently ill. We ate at Soul's Kitchen last night, and now we're all experiencing severe food poisoning. My youngest daughter can barely stand. This is a medical emergency. Ma'am, I'm dispatching paramedics to your location immediately. Can you describe the symptoms? Vomiting, diarrhea, severe abdominal cramping. My husband is delirious with fever. I think we've been poisoned deliberately. That restaurant was filthy, and the owner was hostile when I raised concerns about safety. I believe this was intentional contamination. The 911 operator's fingers flew across her keyboard, elevating the call to priority status. Within minutes, the machinery of emergency response was in motion. Paramedics raced toward the Mitchell residence while health department officials pulled the preliminary inspection report for Soul's Kitchen. Dr. Amanda Foster, the county's head of public health, received the alert at 7:15 a.m. The details were alarming: multiple victims, severe symptoms, potential deliberate contamination. She had dealt with norovirus outbreaks, coli scares, and the occasional bout of listeria. But the accusation of intentional poisoning elevated this to a different category entirely. Get me everything on this restaurant, she told her assistant. Inspection records, staff certifications, supplier documentation, and I want a team on site within the hour. Marcus was preparing for the lunch service when the first health department van pulled up outside Soul's Kitchen. He watched through the front window as 3 officials in protective gear emerged, carrying sealed containers and testing equipment. His stomach dropped. Mr. Thompson. The lead inspector, a stern woman with graying hair, flashed her credentials. I'm Inspector Williams. We've received reports of foodborne illness connected to your establishment. We need to conduct an immediate investigation. Of course, Marcus replied, his mind racing. What can I do to help? We'll need to seal your kitchen and collect samples of all food items. No one enters or exits until we've completed our initial assessment. The next hour passed in a blur of activity. Inspectors photographed every surface, collected samples from each dish, and questioned staff members with clinical precision. Marcus watched helplessly as his dreams seemed to crumble in real time. "Sir, we're going to need you to close immediately," Inspector Williams announced. "Until we can determine the source of contamination, this establishment poses a public health risk." "But we passed our inspection just last week," Marcus protested. "All our suppliers are certified. Our staff is trained." "Mr. Thompson, we have 4 people hospitalized with severe symptoms. The preliminary toxicology indicates possible botulism exposure. This is not a matter for debate." The word botulism hit Marcus like a physical blow. Botulism could kill. If his restaurant had somehow served contaminated food, if people died because of his oversight, the guilt would destroy him faster than any lawsuit or criminal charge. By noon, the story had exploded across local media. "Grand opening turns deadly new restaurant linked to mass poisoning." The coverage was relentless and damning. Security footage from the opening night played on loop, showing the crowded dining room that now seemed ominous rather than celebratory. Channel 7's crime reporter stood outside Soul's kitchen, the yellow tape visible behind her shoulder. "This is Sarah Kim, reporting from what authorities are calling a potential bioterrorism incident." The owner, Marcus Thompson, has not yet commented on allegations that he deliberately contaminated food served to over 200 customers. Marcus stared at his television in disbelief. Bioterrorism. The word transformed him from a neighborhood chef into a public menace, from a small business owner into an enemy of the state. His phone buzzed constantly with calls from reporters, lawyers, and former customers demanding answers. The few friends who reached out spoke in hushed, careful tones, their loyalty tempered by doubt and fear. "Marcus, man, I want to believe you," Tony Castellanos said during one painful conversation. "But my wife is freaking out. She thinks we should all get checked by a doctor. People are scared." The fear spread like wildfire through social media. Within 24 hours, Soul's kitchen scandal was trending locally. Photos of the restaurant appeared alongside gruesome descriptions of food poisoning symptoms. Karen Mitchell had created a detailed Facebook post documenting her family's ordeal, complete with timestamps and medical terminology that suggested extensive research. Day 1. Post-exposure. Severe gastroenteritis onset approximately 6 hours after consumption. Projectile vomiting, explosive diarrhea, fever, reaching 103.2 degrees Celsius. Children presenting with dehydration and electrolyte imbalance. Husband experiencing confusion and muscle weakness consistent with neurotoxin exposure. The post garnered hundreds of shares and thousands of comments, each one adding fuel to the growing panic. Other diners from opening night began reporting symptoms, some real, others psychosomatic, all contributing to the narrative of widespread contamination. Dr. Foster faced mounting pressure from city officials, the media, and an increasingly terrified public. The preliminary tests on samples from Soul's kitchen would take 48 hours to complete. But she couldn't afford to wait. If this was indeed botulism, if the contamination had spread to other establishments through shared suppliers or cross-contamination, the entire food service industry could be at risk. "We're implementing Protocol 7, she announced during an emergency meeting with county officials. Immediate closure and inspection of all restaurants sharing suppliers with Soul's Kitchen. Mandatory testing of all food service workers who had direct contact with the establishment. Public health advisory recommending avoidance of all prepared foods until further notice." Protocol 7 hadn't been invoked since the anthrax scares of 2001. Its implementation sent shockwaves through the restaurant industry, creating a domino effect of closures and panic that extended far beyond Soul's Kitchen. By the end of the week, 17 restaurants had been sealed, their employees sent home without pay. Food distributors reported massive order cancellations as grocery stores cleared their shelves of anything remotely connected to the outbreak. The economic impact was staggering: 12,000 jobs lost, $43 million in direct losses, and a crisis of confidence that threatened to collapse the regional food economy. Marcus watched the devastation unfold from his apartment, where he remained under voluntary quarantine pending the completion of toxicology tests. The weight of responsibility crushed down on him like a physical presence. Even if he was ultimately cleared, the damage was already done. Families were homeless because of restaurants that closed. Workers faced eviction because of paychecks that disappeared. An entire industry teetered on the brink of collapse, and it all traced back to his grand opening celebration. His mother called every few hours, her voice a lifeline in the growing darkness. "This isn't your fault, Marcus. You know that, right? You've always been careful, always done things the right way." "But what if I missed something?" he whispered into the phone. "What if there was contamination I didn't catch? What if people die because I wanted to chase a dream?" "Your father's dream too," she reminded him gently. "And dreams don't kill people. Don't let them steal that from you." The breakthrough came on a Tuesday morning, delivered by Dr. Chen in a voice tight with controlled fury. She had been reviewing the toxicology reports for the third time when the pattern finally emerged. Clear and damning and impossible to ignore. "The contamination is synthetic," she announced to the emergency response team. "Someone deliberately introduced botulinum toxin into specific food samples. But here's the critical detail. The contamination is localized to samples collected from the Mitchell residence, not from the restaurant itself." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. "Furthermore," Dr. Chen continued, "the toxin concentration is precisely measured, suggesting laboratory-grade preparation. This isn't accidental contamination, or even amateur poisoning. Someone with access to pure botulinum toxin planted evidence to frame Soul's Kitchen." Inspector Williams leaned forward, her expression grim. "Are you saying the Mitchell family wasn't actually poisoned?" "I'm saying they were poisoned by someone who wanted it to look like restaurant contamination. Their symptoms were real, but they were deliberately induced. The toxin was added to food samples after they left the restaurant. Then those same samples were provided to us as evidence." The investigation shifted overnight from health crisis to criminal conspiracy. Detective Ray Morrison, a 20-year veteran of the county sheriff's department, took over the case with the methodical precision of someone who had seen too many lives destroyed by false accusations. The first crack in Karen's story came from her own social media presence. Her Facebook timeline revealed months of complaints about urban decay in their neighborhood. Thinly veiled racist comments about new businesses changing the community's character, and specific animosity toward Soul's Kitchen even before it opened. "Look at this post from 3 weeks ago," Detective Morrison told his partner, pointing to the screen. "She's complaining about inappropriate music and loitering outside a restaurant that hadn't even opened yet. Then here, 2 days before the opening, she posts about property values declining due to undesirable establishments." The evidence mounted quickly once investigators knew what to look for. Karen's internet search history revealed extensive research into food-borne illnesses, botulism symptoms, and even queries about purchasing laboratory-grade toxins. Her credit card records showed a suspicious transaction with a medical supply company that specialized in research materials. But the smoking gun came from an unexpected source: her own daughter. 11-year-old Emma Mitchell had been genuinely sick, but her innocent testimony to Child Protective Services revealed details that shattered her mother's carefully constructed narrative. Mommy made us special soup when we got home from the restaurant, Emma told the social worker during a routine welfare check. She said it would help our tummies feel better, but it made us throw up instead. She seemed happy when we got sick, like when I win at soccer. She took lots of pictures of us throwing up. The medical examiner who reviewed Emma's statement confirmed that the timeline was inconsistent with restaurant-based food poisoning. The Mitchell family's symptoms had begun too quickly and too uniformly to be caused by contaminated restaurant food. Armed with search warrants, investigators raided the Mitchell home on a gray Thursday morning. In Karen's home office, hidden behind legal documents and insurance papers, they found vials of pure botulinum toxin, purchased through a falsified research account. Her computer contained detailed plans for framing Soul's Kitchen, including calculations of toxin dosages needed to create convincing symptoms without causing permanent harm. Most damning of all was a journal entry dated the night of the restaurant opening. The arrogant chef needs to learn his place. This neighborhood was peaceful before his kind moved in. If the health department won't shut him down, I'll give them a reason they can't ignore. A few sick kids will bring the whole house of cards down. When Detective Morrison read those words aloud during Karen's arrest, her composed facade finally cracked. The woman who had destroyed dozens of businesses and thousands of livelihoods broke down in her manicured kitchen, sobbing about property values and changing demographics as if they justified attempted murder. "You don't understand," she wailed as the handcuffs clicked shut. "This used to be a good neighborhood. Safe. Quiet. People like him don't belong here." The news of Karen's arrest spread even faster than the original poisoning story. But the damage had already metastasized beyond any possibility of quick repair. 17 restaurants remained shuttered, their owners facing bankruptcy, while lawyers sorted through liability and insurance claims. Thousands of workers continued filing for unemployment benefits. The regional food industry had been traumatized in ways that would take years to heal. Marcus stood in his empty restaurant, surrounded by health department tape and the lingering smell of industrial disinfectant. The dreams he had nurtured for so long felt hollow now, tainted by the knowledge of how easily they could be weaponized against him. But the community that had celebrated his opening night hadn't forgotten him. They arrived at Soul's Kitchen the day after Karen's arrest, not as customers, but as allies. Mrs. Rodriguez brought flowers from her shop. Principal Jackson organized a student fundraiser. Tony Castellanos offered to donate labor for necessary repairs. "We know who you are," Mrs. Rodriguez told him, her weathered hands gentle on his shoulders. "One crazy woman's lies don't change that. This neighborhood needs you. Marcus, don't let her win by walking away." The legal proceedings that followed were swift and decisive. Karen Mitchell was charged with 16 felony counts, including attempted murder, bioterrorism, and filing false police reports. The evidence against her was overwhelming, her motive clear, her methods documented in her own handwriting. During her sentencing hearing, Karen's defense attorney argued for leniency based on mental health issues and community standing. But Judge Patricia Williams, a black woman who understood the deeper implications of the case, was unmoved. "Mrs. Mitchell, your actions went far beyond personal prejudice," the judge declared, her voice carrying the weight of centuries of injustice. "You weaponized the legal system against an innocent man based solely on the color of his skin and your discomfort with demographic change. You caused immeasurable harm to hardworking families, destroyed businesses, and nearly collapsed an entire industry to satisfy your racial animosity." The sentence was severe: 15 years in federal prison, full restitution to affected businesses, and permanent prohibition from operating any food-related enterprise. Karen's assets were seized to fund victim compensation. her comfortable suburban life dismantled as methodically as she had dismantled Marcus's dreams. But justice, while satisfying, couldn't immediately repair the broader damage. The food industry crisis had revealed systemic vulnerabilities in emergency response protocols, the dangerous speed with which misinformation could devastate entire sectors, and the urgent need for protection against weaponized false accusations. Congressman David Torres, whose district included Riverside County, introduced federal legislation nicknamed the Soul's Kitchen Act in response to the crisis. The bill established strict penalties for false food safety accusations, required independent verification of contamination claims before business closures, and created a rapid response fund for establishments wrongfully targeted by malicious reports. We cannot allow racist vigilantes to weaponize our public health systems, Torres declared during the bill's introduction. What happened to Marcus Thompson and the restaurants in our district represents a clear and present danger to entrepreneurial opportunity and economic justice. The legislation passed with overwhelming bipartisan support, a rare moment of unity in an increasingly polarized political landscape. President Martinez signed it into law 6 months after Karen's sentencing, with Marcus standing behind her as she wielded the ceremonial pen. By then, Soul's Kitchen had reopened to national attention. Food Network produced a documentary about Marcus's ordeal, transforming him from a local chef into a symbol of resilience and justice. Celebrity chefs visited his restaurant. Food critics wrote glowing reviews, and customers traveled from across the country to experience the food that had sparked such controversy. The success felt surreal after the depths of despair Marcus had experienced. His restaurant, which had struggled to seat 200 people on opening night, now required reservations weeks in advance. The waiting list included politicians, entertainers, and ordinary people drawn by the story of truth triumphing over hatred. But Marcus never forgot the cost of his vindication. He established a foundation to support small business owners facing discriminatory attacks, funded legal defense services for entrepreneurs targeted by malicious accusations, and mentored young chefs from underrepresented communities who feared their dreams might make them targets. One evening, as Marcus surveyed his bustling dining room, he noticed a familiar face at the corner table where the Mitchell family had once sat. Mrs. Rodriguez was celebrating her granddaughter's quinceañera with 3 generations of family, their laughter mixing with the rich aromas of perfectly seasoned food. The sight filled him with quiet satisfaction. This was what he had always envisioned, a place where community transcended prejudice, where shared meals created bonds stronger than the forces that sought to divide people. Karen Mitchell had tried to destroy that vision with lies and hatred, but she had ultimately made it stronger. As closing time approached, Marcus paused in his kitchen to call his mother, as he did every night. "How was service tonight?" she asked, her voice warm with pride. "Perfect," he replied, looking through the pass-through window at servers clearing the last tables, dishwashers finishing the evening's work, the ordinary magic of a restaurant in full swing. Dad would have loved seeing this. "He does see it," she assured him, "and he knows you never let them break you." Outside, the neon sign for Soul's Kitchen cast its warm glow across the sidewalk, where customers still lingered, reluctant to end their evening. The neighborhood had changed since that first opening night, but the change was organic now, driven by appreciation rather than fear, by authentic community building rather than artificial conflict. Marcus locked the front door and walked to his car, passing the small memorial plaque the city had installed near the entrance. It commemorated not just his struggle, but all the workers and business owners who had suffered during those dark weeks when lies masqueraded as truth. In memory of the resilience of honest work and the triumph of truth over deception. The plaque read, "May this serve as a reminder that communities grow stronger when they refuse to let hatred divide them." The words were simple, but they carried the weight of hard-won wisdom. Truth had indeed triumphed, but only because good people had refused to let lies take root. Justice had prevailed, but only because a community had chosen to stand together against the forces that sought to tear them apart. As Marcus drove home through the quiet streets, he thought about the strange journey that had brought him here. A malicious woman's attempt to destroy his dreams had ultimately elevated them beyond anything he could have imagined. Her weapon of choice, fear and prejudice, had been defeated by the simple power of authentic community and persistent truth. The food industry in Riverside County had not only recovered but thrived, stronger and more resilient than before. New restaurants opened with confidence, knowing that legal protections now existed against weaponized false accusations. Workers returned to jobs in an industry that had learned to defend itself against the corrosive power of manufactured fear. Karen Mitchell remained in federal prison, her comfortable life replaced by the stark reality of consequences. Her children, removed from her custody during the trial, had found loving homes with relatives who were teaching them that diversity strengthened communities rather than threatening them. Sometimes Marcus wondered if she understood the magnitude of what she had unleashed with her false 911 call. In trying to destroy one Black-owned business, she had accidentally created a movement. In attempting to preserve a vision of homogeneous comfort, she had catalyzed unprecedented integration and cooperation. Her hatred had become the foundation for lasting change. Her lies, the catalyst for stronger truth-telling. Her division, the seed of deeper unity. It was perhaps the most fitting justice of all that her attempt to spread poison had ultimately nourished the very thing she had tried to destroy. Marcus pulled into his driveway, exhausted but satisfied after another successful service. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new customers, new opportunities to build community one meal at a time. The dream that had almost died in a haze of false accusations lived on, stronger and more meaningful than ever. The night was quiet, the air still carrying the faint aroma of spices and hopes realized. Somewhere in the darkness, other dreamers were planning their own restaurants, their own contributions to the great American table. They would face their own challenges, their own moments of doubt and fear. But they would also inherit the legacy of Soul's Kitchen, the knowledge that truth, however long delayed, ultimately prevails. That community, however tested, ultimately endures. That dreams, however threatened, ultimately survive. And perhaps, most importantly, that the best response to hatred is not more hatred, but the simple act of continuing to build something beautiful in its place. The story of Soul's Kitchen would be told for generations, a reminder that, in America, the arc of justice may bend slowly, but it bends toward truth. That in a nation built on dreams, those dreams cannot be destroyed by the nightmares of the prejudiced few. Marcus Thompson had set out to open a restaurant. Instead, he had opened minds, changed laws, and proved once again that love and persistence could triumph over fear and hatred. It was a lesson worth remembering, a story worth telling, and a legacy worth preserving for all the dreamers yet to come. In the end, Karen Mitchell's false alarm had become something she never intended, a wake-up call for justice, a rallying cry for community, and a testament to the unbreakable spirit of those who refuse to let hatred have the last word.